So we have, we're racing the clock. All right, I just wanted to show you one last point on Parshas Mishpatim, right at the end of the Parsha, page 442. Page 442. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the mountain on page 440. There's a beautiful thought here. There's a beautiful idea here. And it says, very last pasuk, page 442, 4 lines on the bottom. Moshe describes the mountain. Moshe goes up to the mountain. And then in pasuk 15, 6 lines on the bottom says, Vayal Moshe el hahor. Moshe goes up to the mountain. Vayechas he'onon es hahor. The cloud covered the mountain. Moshe goes up to the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. Then it says, Vayishkon kvod Hashem al har Sinai v'yechaseu anon sheishes yamim. The cloud covered for 6 days. Vayikra el Moshe b'yom hashvi mitoch anon. God clothes the Moshe from inside the cloud. Umare kvod Hashem ke'esho cheles b'rosh hahar. Hashem's appearance came out like a fire at the top of the mountain. Le'enei b'nei Yisrael, the Jewish people saw this fire. And then Vayavo Moshe b'socha anon. Moshe goes through the cloud. Vaya'al el hahar. He goes up to the mountain. Moshe is up on this mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Just to get a perspective over here, I mean, you see your leader is walking off into the mountain, into a cloud. He's got no provisions with him. He's got nothing with him. He's just walking up to a mountain, and he disappears for 40 days and 40 nights. Then we understand later on why the Jewish people were a little spooked when he came late in Parshas Kisisa by the golden calf, when he's 6 hours late. And the Jewish people thought, well, this is it. I mean, this is the man who said at midnight they're going to die. And everything was on the split on a dime. And all of a sudden on his own, you can understand the people. Well, we saw him go up a mountain, with nothing with him. He's been up there 40 days and 40 nights. So, but, you can understand that there may be a little bit of question, what happened to him and why is he late? So then they panic and start making the egel. But Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says over here that this is a description of how you learn Torah. When you start learning, where's Moshe going up? He's going up to get to the Torah. When you start learning a piece of Gemara, you're in a cloud. Did you ever get that feeling? I'm just in a cloud. It's a cloud, right? I would say it's a thunderstorm, but the Torah calls it a cloud. And then you work at it. And all of a sudden, Hashem makes a path for Moshe between. Vayavo Moshe v'sochanan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a path for Moshe Rabbeinu in the cloud. Says Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, that's what Torah learning is. Torah learning is you learn, you try, you make an effort, you're in a cloud, and all of a sudden, don't you get that feeling also like, whew, it all cleared out. All of a sudden, it all clears out. That's Siyata D'Shmaya. And the Siyata D'Shmaya comes when a person makes the effort to learn. That's all we can do. Make the effort. And that's why I told you, you have a phenomenon. You read the piece of Gemara once, I read it twice, I read it 3 times in double Dutch. I don't know what's happening. I read it a 4th time, I'm still not clear. I read it a 5th time, and all of a sudden it gets clear. What changed? I saw the same words. The same words. What happened? What happened was I made the effort. And after you make the effort, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it to you as a gift. If you make the effort, then it's a gift. And we have to understand it's not a result of our effort. It's only a result HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to give us a gift. And that's how Torah learning always is. Okay. Parshas Truma. V'daber Hashem al Moshe lemor, daber o b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu li truma. Now this statement, they shall take for me a donation, right off the bat is a strange statement. V'yikchu li truma, they shall take for me a truma. Sounds like my Zaidi. My Zaidi spoke. He came from Europe, and his English was never quite polished. Take to me the cake. Like that. Take to me a truma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, right? Why is it? It should be. What should it say? They should give me. They should give me a truma. V'yikchu li truma. Why is it should say v'yitznu li truma? They should give me a truma. Number 1. Me'es kol ish asher yidvenu libo tikhu es trumasi. From all men who their hearts are so inclined, you shall take my truma. Now, before anything, the medrash on this pasuk. It's freezing in here. Maybe we'll turn on one of the heaters. It's really cold in here. Thanks, Ron. Oh, that'll do it. The window. I just heard a window close. Yeah, there's all of a sudden. Yeah. So the Medrash on this pasuk says, Ki lekach tov nasati lachem, I have given you, we say it in davening on Shabbos, Ki lekach tov nasati lachem, I have given you a good instruction, Torasi al ta'azovu, do not forsake my Torah. And the Medrash on this pasuk goes to town, right at the beginning of the parsha. If you look in the Medrash, the classic Midrash, the Tanchuma, the Medrash Rabbi, the Medrash goes to town about the value of Torah. The Medrash tells a story about a merchant who's on a ship with other merchants. And they come to this guy, and they say to him, he's a Talmid Chacham, they say to him, where's your merchandise? And he says to them, I don't have any merchandise that's visible to you, but my merchandise is worth more than yours. And they say to the guy, they start laughing at him. What are you going? We're going to a place to go sell our merchandise, so you haven't got any merchandise. And he says, mine is more valuable than yours. And sure enough, they get stopped by pirates, and the pirates ransack the ship, and they confiscate everybody's merchandise. This guy's got nothing to take away. Then they land on shore. When they land on shore, this guy goes into a shul and he gives a drasha, and everybody sees he's a Talmid Chacham, so they give him a lot of respect, and they give him a position, and they're feeding him. So the other merchants come to him and say, hey, do us a favor, maybe you could intercede on our behalf and get some food for us too. He says, I told you my merchandise is worth more than yours. My merchandise is Torah. My merchandise is Torah. There's no merchandise that's worth as much as Torah. You don't take anything else with you except Torah, umasim tovit. So the Medrash, that's what the Medrash says over here. By the way, there's another Medrash that says there was a man who his whole life he studied Tractate Chagiga. He learned Tractate Chagiga. You ever heard this Medrash? Mm-hmm. He learned Chagiga his entire life. This Medrash is brought down in the Sefer Menorahs HaMo'or, which is a 13th century compilation. He studied Chagiga his entire life. Tractate Chagiga. It's a very short Masechta. He studied it, then the man died. And he was alone in his home when he died. And a woman went out and she said, please, somebody died over here, you have to, what do you call it? You have to bury this guy. And they went into the house, and she was wailing and wailing until they realized that, and then they went after the funeral, they were looking for her and she disappeared. And they realized she was the neshama of Tractate Chagiga. The neshama of Tractate Chagiga, who he had spent his whole life studying. The neshama, what does that mean, that a Masechta has a neshama? I'm not quite sure. Right? But the Masechta Chagiga has a neshama. And the neshama for a person learned Chagiga. That's all he learned his entire life. He learned Chagiga over and over. Yet by learning a Masechta, you take on the Masechta's neshama. In any event. So it says, V'yichu li truma. Why does it say, V'yichu, they shall take to me a truma? Why doesn't it say, they shall give me a truma? So there are two answers. Answer number one is, there's nothing you can give Hashem because it's all His. Li hakesef. You're only giving Hashem what's His. So you're not really giving it to Him. You're still you're taking. You've taken it. And now you just happen to be giving it back. You're not really giving anything because it's not here. We don't own anything. Number one. Number two, I told you there's a question in the Gemara. Asks, what about a guy who goes to a woman, you want to get married. So what do? You say, Harei mekudesh li, and you give her a ring. What if a woman says to a man, Harei ata mekudesh li, and gives him a ring? Does it work? No. Why not? Correct, because you're taking possession of her and she's not taking possession of you. That is correct. That is 100% correct. Thank you. That is 100% correct. Obviously, it's not that you don't own her. There's even a halachic shaila about a husband can't donate one of his wife's kidneys. And he doesn't own her physically, doesn't literally own her. But in a marriage, you should know that under the chuppah, you guys weren't at the chuppah last night, neither was I, but at a chuppah, what's happening is a transaction. There is a monetary, after all the music and the flowers and everything else, at the bottom line is there is a monetary transaction taking place under the chuppah, which is what?
Acquiring woman.
She, for lack of a better term, and I say this again, for lack of a better term, she is transferring possession of herself to you in exchange for a pruta. Oh, sorry, I'm not laughing. She's exchanging, yeah, well, they get the last laugh because you got to support them, right? And you gotta care for her. The obligations of financial obligations are on you, the same way that you have financial obligations for your other property. So you owe her. You gotta pay for her clothing, and you gotta pay for her food, and you gotta basically. The Gemara says a man should spend more on his wife than he could afford. A man has to spend more on his wife than he could afford, and his wife and children. On himself, he should cut back. And the Gemara says, because they're dependent on you, and you're dependent on the Ribbono Shel Olam. They're dependent on you. What the Gemara is really telling you is that if you show that you allow them to be dependent on you, the Ribbono Shel Olam will allow you to be dependent on him. But if you're going to skimp, don't skimp on her. Rav Shteiman, you have a beautiful story. Guy comes to Rav Shteiman. Guy's learning in Koil. Comes to Rav Shteiman and he says, lives in Bnei Brak. Bnei Brak's brutal. In summer, Bnei Brak's brutal, right? Which is basically from January till January. So Bnei was very hot in summer. Bnei was very hot. So a guy comes to Rav Shteiman and says, my wife wants to install an air conditioner in the house. I'm a little wary, I'd say that's quite an expense. Now it's not everybody in Bnei Brak has air conditioners. There was one time where they lived without the air conditioners. He said, my wife wants to install an air conditioner. I'm wary about the expense. I don't think that it's worth the expense. What did Rav Shteiman say to the guy?
Get it.
Now I'll tell you what a smart Jew is. Rav Shteiman said, can I ask you a question? What do you do during the day? He says, I learn in Kollel. He said, is there an air conditioner in your kollel? He goes, yeah. He goes, right. So you're comfortable all day and you want your wife in a hot house, so they get the air conditioner. It's perfectly logical. Perfectly logical. So when you marry a woman, so we know what works, we know what doesn't work. What about the middle level? You go to a woman and a woman gives you the ring and you say, with my acceptance of the ring that you're giving me, I now betroth you. Does that work or not? Says the Gemara, it depends. Depends who the man is. If he's a prominent man whom she takes pleasure in being married to him, it's a valid kedusha. Because he's taking possession of her in exchange for the pleasure or benefit that he gives her of being married to him. That works. So what's he doing in fact? By giving, and what's he really doing? He's taking. So if you go to the President of the United States with your class trip and you present him with a gift and he rejects it, how would you feel? You're trying to give him something and he rejects it. You want to give somebody a gift, they reject it, how do you feel? You're honored that he accepts the gift. When they give a truma to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the yikhuli truma, by you donating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, for the building of the Mishkan, in fact, that we're willing to take your money, that for you is an act of taking. That means your giving is actually an act of taking. The yikhuli, they'll take for me a truma. By giving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and having him willing to accept what we're giving, that's actually an act of taking. Therefore, the Torah uses v'yichlu. Now, I want to answer a question. Where'd this money come from? All the things the Torah is going to describe, gold, silver, all this possession, where'd they get it from? Yam Suf. Isn't that interesting? What are we going to build the most holy spot on earth? What are we going to build it out of? Egyptian gold. How's that sound? Right? Nowadays, they always talk about reparations from the Germans. Right? Ooh, we don't want the German reparations. We don't want to ease them. I'll take it. Right? German reparation. We don't want to let them ease their conscience. We don't care about their conscience. Here you're taking from the Egyptians who kept you 400 years, and you're taking their gold, you're taking their possessions, what you took from Egypt, you took from Yam Suf, and you're going to, where the Jewish people get gold and silver from? The Torah is saying, yeah, right. We're going to donate that because that's the reminder of getting out of Egypt. That is exactly the reminder of getting out of Egypt. Maybe turn it off. It's too hot already. Thanks. Number one. Number two, there's something very strange. If you look at Parshas Bereshis, the creation of the world, the description of the creation of the world is all of 31 psukim. Whole world, 31 psukim. They're building a tent. They're building a mishkan, which is essentially a tent. How many psukim is it? It's the better part of 5 parshas. 5 parshas that describe the building of the Mishkan. Interesting, isn't it? What does that tell you? So tell you what, if somebody would say to you, what's the most important event in history? The most important event in history is the creation of the world, because no creation, there's no history at all, right? No, that's certainly a significant contribution to history, right? It's certainly a significant contribution. What's the most important event in history? The most important event in history is the giving of the Torah. And the next important event of history is that there should be a Mishkan. Now, there is a dispute, there is a debate here among the fact that the Torah puts so much emphasis on it and goes through 5 parshas of Mishkan description tells you about the importance of what a place the Mishkan occupies, because we're trying to have a dwelling place for the Shekhinah. Now, there are 2 schools of thought here. Listen carefully. There are 2 schools of thought among the Rishonim. There's one opinion that the Mishkan was a lichatchila, and there's one opinion that the Mishkan is a b'di'evid. Now, you know what b'di'evid means? B'di'evid means after the fact. That means when you make, if I ask you, are you allowed to make a shahakol on a bread?
Yeah. B'di'evid.
What?
B'di'evid.
B'di'evid. That means you're not allowed to make a shahakol on bread. It's usher to make a shahakol on bread. It just happens to be if you make an asher yotzar on bread, right, so then you're not yotzei at all. If you make a shalo asani isha on bread, you're not yotzei at all. If you make a what do you call it, a zokef kefufim on bread, you're not yotzei at all, even if it's a laufa that stands up high in the air. Zokef kefufim does not work on bread. Are you allowed to make a shahakol on bread? No, you're not allowed to make a shahakol on bread. But if you did, b'di'evid, the word b'di'evid means b'di'avad. After you've done it. After the fact, it happens to work. But it's not the first choice. They talk about a guy who dies and he goes up to Gan Eden. The guy, his whole life, everything he did was b'di'evid. He lived b'di'evid. He did all the mitzvahs of b'di'evid. So then he dies and he goes up to paradise. He goes up to Gan Eden. So they give him the judgment. They say, okay, you go to Gan Eden. Oh, wow, this is great. So they bring him into Gan Eden. And he's kind of in this rickety shack. You know, he's kind of looking around, you know, and they say, okay, go down. You're the 3rd room on the right. And he walks down, you know, he goes to the 3rd room on the right. There's a door. The door is a kind of wobbly door. And he opens it up. There's a table with some, you know, couple of day-old fruit in the bucket, in the bowl over there, you know, and a little stale bread, you know, and some leftover peanut butter. And he's looking around. He goes, well, you know, this is Gan Eden. And he hears the voice comes out and says, b'di'evid. Right? So we're not b'di'evid Jews. Was there supposed to be a Mishkan where the concentration of the Shekhinah is there or not? According to one school of thought, it was l'chatchila. This was the plan from the beginning. The other school of thought says this is all out of order, and this is a response to the golden calf. That means before the chet of the golden calf, before the chet at Egel, the plan was that the dwelling of the Shekhinah is going to rest on the entire Jewish people, all over the place. After the chet of the Egel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, we're going to plan B, to the b'di'evid plan, where the Shekhinah is going to only be concentrated in a specific place because the people have lost the worthiness of having the Shekhinah all over. So the Shekhinah is going to. So there is a basic fundamental dispute about whether or not the Shekhinah is going to be, the Mishkan was a lichatchila or the Mishkan is a b'di'evid after the fact. So the Torah says like this, Me'es kol isha asher yidvenu libo tikhu es trumasi. From every person who his heart so inclines him, you shall take my truma. Now there are 2 ideas over here. Idea number 1 is that there are going to be different degrees of donating. What we want is people who, if they could, they would give you their heart. Me'es kol isha asher yidvenu libo. We want people who are willing to give their heart. That's how you should get. We can't give our heart, so they're going to give the money instead. Question number 1. Question number 2. Idea number 2 is like this. You know, when people donate money to a yeshiva, people donate money to a yeshiva, what does the money get spent on? Sfarim, food in the lunchroom, tissues by the bathroom, right? There are a lot of expenses for a yeshiva. What would you do? What would your reaction be if I come over to you and say, hey, could you donate to our yeshiva? We need a year's supply of tissues. Most people give money, and what they picture is some Torah scholar like this, who we managed to get some food to his mouth so he doesn't die at the last minute from the money that you gave us. I'm saving Torah. The fact remains that all the money goes into one big account, and we write checks for whatever the needs of a yeshiva are. You go to the Beis Hamikdash. Now, we're giving raw materials. You're donating gold. There are two choices. Your gold could go on the outside wall as a coating, or your raw gold could go into the kruvim that stand on the Aron Kodesh. And what's your reaction? I'll take a wing, please. like we're having chicken at the table. I'll take a wing. Right? Where do you want your gold to go? Right? Where do you want to go? Where do you go? Where would you like your gold to go? So how do you do? Everybody's giving gold. How do you determine where? Everybody has different levels. They're different ratings. People, that's normal human nature. How do you determine whose gold is going into the Aron Kodesh, whose gold is going into the kruvim, and whose gold is going to paint the wall, melt down, and paint the outside? How do you determine that? It's called Isha Asher Yidvenu Libo. The people who took the donations had the ability to sense what was in the heart of the donors. Are you donating it because you really want to? You're donating it because this guy did, so I'll show him. Right? Anyway, he grabbed that golden lantern that I wanted at Yam Suf. I'll show him. Oh, you're giving a pound of gold. Watch this. That's not the purest motivation. And it's Asher Yidvenu Libo. The people receiving the gold, the people receiving the donations, had the perception to be able to know what's going on in the heart of the people who are donating it. Okay, so we have to end early today because Rabbi Geffen said to stop now because they're having the Yom Kippur cotton. He said everybody should go to the Rosh Hashiva speaking first, and there's going to be Yom Kippur cotton.